So yeah, with creating your own shots, I think the most important thing to start thinking about is like the goal for the shot. Um, so maybe the very first like reason for you creating the shot is you are bored at work and you feel like you're not animating the right kind of stuff, and then you got to ask yourself, what sort of stuff would that be? Like, do I want to do more creature stuff? Am I not getting enough body mechanics? Do I want to do some acting? Like, what is the thing that you're looking to do? And then like come up with a goal for that. Maybe one comes before the other. Like, is the goal to have fun? Do you just want to like get some frustration out? Do you want to become Twitter famous? Like, do you want to like make something that's going to do really well on the internet? Do you want it to be for your animation reel? Is it like a very specific thing that your reel might be missing? Maybe you are looking for, you've got everything in your reel except for creatures, or like you've got way too many creatures in your reel, so maybe there's something new you want to put in there. Is it just for practice? Like, are you feeling like your acting isn't quite up to scratch, so you want to like improve on that? Or are you going to be targeting like a specific studio or game or movie? Like maybe you know that you've got a friend who's working on Godzilla, so you're like, I really want to work on Godzilla. They're still hiring for this movie. I might do like a massive creature shot, a really heavy creature. And then you put that in your reel and target that studio. So and this is all in the goal of getting you excited about creating the shot, because it's really hard to make time and get motivated to do a personal shot if there's no goal there for you, if you don't have like something in mind to sort of spur you on. And especially if that goal is something that you're excited about, like if you don't like where you're working right now, or you want to move up in where you are working right now, or whatever it happens to be, to sort of push you along. Because I find like motivation is the main thing people struggle with when it comes to animating outside of work hours. And if you've got a reason for it, it becomes it just steps up that level of, I'm actually going to do this because I actually care about the outcome. There's kind of different places you can go to start thinking about ideas for shots. So for me, a lot of my ideas come to me when I'm just walking. If you walk from the train to home, or if you just walk around the neighborhood, it's like a good like rhythmic thing. You're not really thinking about anything in particular. It's the best time to think of cool stuff, I think, is when your brain is like out of the picture and you're not really like focused on any one thing in particular. Taking a shower, going to the gym, whatever it is for you that lets your brain just like leave the house, and so you can focus on, or just let your mind wander. Another thing that I actually just stumbled on, and I'll show you this really stupid video I made. But it got me thinking, like, this could be a cool way to come up with like a shot. I did this, did you rig? Yeah, I did rig Dragon Ball Z character myself. I did this Unito 1 rig for my Patreon. Oh, is it gonna load? Oh yeah. I don't know if you can hear the audio, it's really quiet, but it was just for fun, like a stupid Twitter spoof.
No, I can't hear anything.
That's all right. It's just quiet. That's all right. And I'm just moving the camera around while the cycle's playing. But then I realized watching it back, I was like, hey, this is actually some cool camera angles. And like, even if it's not playing this animation while it's doing this, if it's doing something else, there's just like, ideas start popping up. It's sort of like when you look at like a Rorschach test or like a cloud, you like see stuff that you might not have necessarily seen before. So like this idea right here of the camera low while it's like running along and like sweeping by its feet, like that's a really cool opening for like a potential action shot. Or like, just whatever different camera angles you can come up with. So to repeat this, you could find a character that you want to animate with, just put it in an interesting pose or a couple of different interesting poses, move the camera around to music, because music helps you kind of like get an idea for rhythm, and then use that as like a jumping off point for a shot. It's just like anything that'll get your brain going, and sort of, not thinking too hard about it. Because I find that if you start planning it out a little bit too much, especially right now in the beginning, it can be like hard to find something good, especially if you're not really, like if you're not like a storyboard artist or someone who comes from like a story or cinematography or shot planning layout background, I find it really hard to do layout and come up with ideas. So if I can stumble upon them, or if I can like make the ideas come to me, then that's really useful. The Samus shot, this one right here, this idea came to me while I was in one of those like isolation float tank pod things. And I was like, I want to do like an animation right now, because I was working on like this app while I was freelancing, and there was barely any animation in it, and it was for the Wiggles. And I was like, this is not stimulating me at all. Let's like make something. And I was in the float pod, and I was like, what's the coolest action I could come up with? And that animator, what's his name? He did a Samus shot as well. And I was like, I want to do something like that, you know, like it's maybe the ball's rolling and then it comes through and it does sort of a similar arc. And then, you know, we go into like a different action. I'll try and remember the name of the guy. It'll come to me. So yeah, just wherever you can sort of let your brain get out of the way and start thinking about what's cool. What do you want to see? With that one goal in mind is really useful as well. So another way you can, sorry?
How'd you do the transition from the board to the character, the biped?
There's one frame where it's both the biped and the ball. It's very simple, and it's just sort of like in a rolled up pose.
Yeah. So you just blending it in Maya, really, over a frame.
Yeah. You probably don't even need to have them both visible. Like I reckon you could even get like grease pencil and just like paint over with orange, you know, just like scribble.
Yeah.
And just like then that would get you kind of a better, more clean, you know, shape. But yeah.
Oh, still works.
Yeah, it gets the idea across, right? Like you don't see the point, hopefully. So what else was I going to say here? Finding time, staying accountable. So one way that I've heard some people use to like stay on point and stay accountable is to like write a check for like $50 and give it to their friend, and then say like, if I don't do this thing, you just get to cash this check, and here's like the deadline for it. You know, it's like then you've actually got money, like you've got something on the line to lose. That's a little bit far, I think. I don't know. I've never actually done that.
All of my students get
What's
them
that?
to.
You did that?
No, I should do it. Get them to deposit.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Finish your shot.
Yeah, dude. The incentive is there. It's like that's one of the things. It's like people seem to only work when there's money involved, which is weird. Another way you can keep accountable is doing a collab. So if you've got a friend or workmate who's like also interested in doing something similar, you could be like, all right, let's do this like fight scene, and I'll do the first half and you do the second half, or I'll do the blue character and you do the red character, or something like that. It gets a bit tricky with fight stuff because of all of the like grappling and fulcrum points and stuff. But you know, think of something that you can potentially have two people working on at the same time. And if you're both excited about it for the same reasons, then that helps. You can wake up an hour earlier. Like if you're not already waking up super duper early to get ready for work, oftentimes a lot of people can stand to lose an hour of sleep and still be productive throughout the day. It's not like sustainable in the long term. Like if you're obviously like keep your health in mind and like get 8 hours or whatever you need. But if you can do an hour in the morning, then that's really useful. Or you can do an hour after work. There was a time there when I was freelancing where I would be at this person's office all day, and then I would spend an hour after working there just working on my own stuff. So just like plonk an hour at the end of every day, and you've got 5 days a week. You've already got like 5 hours of animation dedicated to your personal stuff, and that's like nearly a full day, you know. So it starts to rack up, and what you'll find with that is you'll start getting more excited about it. As you see the thing taking shape, you'll want to not just spend an hour on it, you'll want to spend more than an hour, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, I can see this being something. Maybe I want to like spend, like actually get in the zone with this, and then you like take time out of your weekend. So it's not like the more you put in, the more you get out. What else have I got here? Okay, so like once you've got started, another way to sort of keep things going is to post whips, like work in progress, play blasts or clips. I'm a little bit conflicted about whips. I don't really know how exactly I feel about it. I think sometimes posting a whip can be really good because it gets people excited and it builds your like profile. They're like, hey, this is really great. You get a bunch of likes and retweets, and that might motivate you to keep working on it, or it might motivate you to leave it. Maybe you already feel like you've got enough out of it just by getting all of those retweets. I don't know. It's sort of a bit personal. It's also good because like if you start posting whips and building like a Twitter following or a social media following, you can build like a network of people who maybe that the people in your group can like say when work is available, or offer you a job or whatever it is, you know, like it's the more people you can get closer to you on social media with regards to work, it's kind of useful. I might talk about that a bit later in another freelancing part. So yeah, posting whips is good. The 40-10 method. So this is a bit of a personal one. It depends however you want to do it. So the 40-10 is you work for 40 minutes and then you relax for 10. I found this only worked when I was a lot younger, and maybe I just need to try it again. But the idea is that you work for 40 minutes straight with no distractions. You like unplug the internet. Your phone's in a drawer. You're not able to like look at anything really except for the screen and your work for like 40 minutes straight. And then you take 10 minutes after that to do whatever you like. You can check social media, you can play a little mobile game, whatever it is. And that the idea there is to keep going. Like after you do that 10 minutes rest, you do another 40 minutes. Then you do 10, then you do 40, and you just keep on rolling. And yeah, like the idea is to have that 40 minutes be really productive, rather than do like 8 hours of work and then have maybe 1 hour of that be productive work. You end up with like a stack of really productive work. And that's an interesting thing as well. Like I find that when I'm doing personal work, I tend to be pretty distracted. Like I'm like, this is my time, you know. I get to like put Twitch on in the background. I get to like listen to different podcasts, or just have a movie on the other monitor. I'm not really super focused on it, especially in the beginning. I'm just kind of like planning out ideas, and whatever's in the background screen's in the background screen. So yeah, and with the 40-10 method, it can be loose as well. Like it doesn't have to be 40 minutes. You could do half an hour on and 20 minutes off. Something, whatever ends up working for you. So let's talk a little bit about process, I guess.
Excuse me.
Hey.
Can you hear me? Hey.
Yeah.
I just had a question. You talked about like planning your ideas at the same time that you were watching movies and stuff like that. Do you sketch when you plan, or do you plan like on Maya or something like that?
With my personal stuff, I tend to just jump straight into Maya. I don't draw too often. I do a little bit of life drawing, and I find that gets like the drawing out of my system. Yeah, I don't do too much like thumbnails or ideation on like paper. I'll tend to just like start posing it out, and if it works, I kind of know. Like I've heard a lot of people be like, it's a good point, because like a lot of people really use the lightweightness of paper to get their ideas out really quick to see if they're working. But for me, it's just as quick to pose a character, and then like if you've got the character pose and it's working, then you're already like some of the way there. That's kind of how I see it. But yeah.
Okay, thanks.
That's all right. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about process. I got some like different stages of this dragon shot that I did. So let's look at the final one. I did this right before I started a method. So this is one of the newer shots, I guess. And it was also like playing around with like rendering and lighting and stuff in this one. Someone on Twitter had posted like, here's an easy way to light your shot. So I just followed that tutorial. So to come up with this, I was like, I know I want to do a creature shot. I haven't done creatures in a while. And I know I want to do a dragon because I haven't animated a dragon in like 4 years. So let's do it. Let's do that. I found a dragon rig. It's the Josh Sobel one. I think it costs money, this one, but I'm not sure. I'll post a link. Josh Sobel. I'll post a link later. This little thing is really annoying. All right, there we go. So I thought rather than like have the rig in the scene, it's quite a heavy rig being a dragon with all the bones in the wings. I was like, let's plan out the shot with a cube first. And you've probably seen this around before, maybe not, but it gets you like thinking about the rhythm of the shot. There's not even any like cubes for wings or anything like that. It's literally just the shape that I imagine the body doing as it like flaps and comes down and walks across the rocks. Let me just make sure I got the right order here. I believe it is in the right order. Yeah, okay, cool. So then this is what like my first pass kind of looks like. You can tell I got really excited about animating wings and like spent a lot of time getting the wings working early. And then there's like all kinds of like space popping issues with the head looking around. The way that I was still kind of like figuring out the rig at this point, not knowing like whether or not I wanted the head to be IK or like, you know, FK and locked or, you know, something in between, just sort of working it out. Same thing with the hands. I think, yeah, you can see there's like pops when the IK and FK turns on and off. And this is also like an interesting point right here is where I decided that I liked the sort of speed of the swishingness of the tail. So I was like, oh, this is kind of interesting. I like how he like whips right before he lands. Let's focus in on that. So that's like part of the process, right? Like as you're creating your own personal shot, because it's so open, you have the potential to be like, you know what, maybe this dragon doesn't weigh 8 tons. It only weighs like 3 or 1, or maybe only like X amount. You can sort of play with stuff a little bit. You're not so locked into, you know, if you're creating a shot for like Jumanji or something, it's like, oh, this horse is obviously this kind of horse. This is how it moves. You kind of have to stick to that. When you're doing more personal stuff, you can just be open.
Joe, Abhishek asked, do you share around your shot while working on it to get reviews from your friends or peers?
Not normally in this point, because unless I'm like stuck or really need some advice, I kind of just keep going ahead with where I'm at. And it depends on how you feel about that. Maybe at this early point, you know, you might want to show it to like a brain's trust or friends or something like that to sort of bounce off and see if they have any cool ideas for you. But for me, I've kind of already got the idea in my head mostly. Like I have the main beats in my head, so it's just a matter of just spending the time to get there. And then everything else is layered on top of that, you know, like I was talking about the tail, like then the weight of the thing, maybe it weighs less. You can see here I'm like playing with how I want the hands to come down. Like originally I thought it would be like and it would like land really heavy, but now I'm like maybe the hands are like kind of floppy. And then they come down sort of one after the other. I think I'm also adding like some handheldy sort of camera stuff here and a little bit of a shake. Yeah, and so you can see like we're kind of like halfway through the process, right? Or like getting towards the end of the process right here. And I'm like, maybe we want a camera change. So that kind of like that throws off the whole like the original idea was I wanted just one camera, but because it's like a personal shot, you can do that. You're not locked to the plate, or you're not locked to whatever the game camera is. You can play around with it. And I think I had ideas for it like coming down the steps a little bit more. Like if you look at the original box, I think he like comes down. Yeah, he like steps down and he goes around. I wanted to get that like snaking kind of idea of like the head leading through the action. I don't think I got there in the end. I think I kind of, yeah, he sort of just comes down and around. If I were to go back and do this again, I'd try and do that, get the head leading the action a little bit more. And the Josh Sobel Dragon rig actually comes with like a bunch of face sculptors and body sculptors and color texture packs. And you can just like use the picker that comes with the rig to change between them really easily. So at this point I was like trying to figure out a little bit more the personality of the dragon. I changed the whole like color and the shape of the head. And it's really cool when rigs have that level of customization. It gives you, as the animator, it gives you like way more creative freedom. Francisco, what kind of reference did you use while animating the dragon? This actually didn't use any reference. This is all just like trying to remember how flight works. I know that I've seen, you know, Game of Thrones was happening at the time, so I was like, I think I was looking at some dragon stuff from that, but I didn't want to be too tired. I didn't have any like reference on the other screen while I was doing this. I was just like remembering like how to do a flap and then thinking about the weight of something with 4 legs as it lands. I wasn't doing any personal reference. I didn't film anything. Yeah, this is just all at the top of my head. No, I don't know. That's probably lazy. I don't know if it's good. It's probably lazy. And you can see here, like I'm really pushing that tail idea. I was thinking like, oh, the tail gets kind of lost behind the body a little bit, but you still get the sense of it really whipping. And especially at the end here, I pushed it even further. I was like, I want the tail to like whip past as he does this like roar at the camera. I think at multiple times during this process, I was trying to decide what, you know, there's different thoughts about like how dragons' wings work in animation and in the real world. Like, how are they delicate? They're so thin. Should they avoid touching the ground? Or do they not care? Like, they're dragons. They're made out of diamonds or whatever. They can do whatever they want with their wings. But I think with this one, I was like, he's going to use these like pointy bits as like sort of arms and claws. He's going to dig them into the ground to get like a bit of stability as he's walking around. Wait, he's blocking. Yeah. We're going back in time now, but I missed this one because it was not called a number. It was just called blocking. So this is what it this is what it looked like before I did first pass. Pretty dirty. And this is kind of just my method as well. Like, I know that when it comes to doing personal shots, I like to change how I do my process, just because it's like, this is my time to experiment and find new stuff. So I might not do the cube through to blocking through like spline passes. I might try and stay in step for a really long time, or I might use reference one-to-one. You know, it's like whatever process you feel is best going to get you the goal or something that you want to try. It's a really good time to like think about how you've been doing things as an animator and shift it a little bit, or maybe just refine it a little bit. So like, for instance, with this one, this is the Carl Figgins rig. Like, I didn't do any blocking or any reference or anything. I didn't even research. I was just like, let's put this thing in cool poses and just like throw it across the screen and just see what happens. Like, this was the result of just being really bored and just playing around. And it was like a new Carl Figgins rig that I wanted to try out. And then like midway through, I was like, I remember Final Fantasy, what was it? Final Fantasy 13, or I don't know which one it was, with Prince Noctis. And he had this thing where he could like throw his sword or his blade and like teleport to wherever it landed. And I was like, that's a really cool thing. So when you're like coming up with ideas, or if you're like me and you just like launch yourself into making something like this, as you go, stuff kind of comes to you. And it's good then to like reflect on that and be like, well, what was cool about Noctis? Was it the way that he threw it, or was it the fact that he teleported, or was it the particles? Maybe we could use particles. And then you start like doing some research on that and adding it into your shot. Like, it's just like the ideal time to mess around. So one of the places that I like to go to come up with cool ideas is anime. Like anime oftentimes is like they do this like very cheap thing where they're just like a still pose and like a mouth talking, but then they do like the sakuga, like the really high budget action sequences, and like it's just like filled like to the brim with cool ideas and jumping off points. So I have this clip from like, let me just mute it, Evangelion. And you can just like literally pick a frame somewhere and you'll come up with something cool. Right? Like how this plane comes apart. If you're not an effects artist, how would I do this? You know, what would we do to like get this effect going in just animation? That would be a really cool idea to like play around with a character smashing something and then it coming apart. This whole sequence is just a big fight. So these guys have got these like big double-sided blades, and they look like they weigh like more than a building. They're just so heavy. So when they swing them around, they go off balance, like they lose balance. So like that's something to play with. Like what if I gave my character, oh geez, it's gory. What if I gave my character like something that was so heavy that they, to even swing it, they needed to like fall over basically. So if we go back here, this is really interesting, the way they do ground breaking in anime. They do this thing where, maybe not in this example, but oftentimes they'll just use cubes. They'll float cubes and then float them slowly. Like, look at how they do that and try and replicate it and add it like as extra spice into your shot. Yeah, anime is just full of, yeah, here we go. Here's the example of the, I think, the swinging. Back here a little bit. Right? Look at these poses, dude. It's nuts. Like he can't even like lift this thing without his whole spine being bent over. Yeah, it's awesome. So with anime and like looking for inspiration, I have this thing where I'm like a little bit hesitant to be like, just copy it one for one. But here's an example of taking something and just doing it one for one. And like, you can see some parts of it are really successful and other parts aren't. And there's lessons to learn from that. It's like, well, if I'm animating all on 2s, does the camera stay in all on 2s as well, or all on 4s? How does the camera work? I think I learned from this that the camera should probably not be on all the exact same frames as all the poses that you're working on. So this is on like 4s or something. And I had the camera like clicking along with the character. So maybe next time I would rather have, if the character's moving on 4s, then the camera's moving on 2s. So you get like this kind of more smooth motion. What else have I got here? So when I was at Method, how did you make him go Super Saiyan? I've got, with great power, you know, like he's got to get over a certain power level and then his hair changes color. Remember the show? This rig that I made, sorry?
2000 or something.
Yeah. Over 9,000. Yeah, there we go. Teo knows. Teo knows. Yeah. Very good. This rig has, the model came with a bunch of different face shapes or a bunch of different face meshes. So in the rig, I just made like a set-driven key. that as you drag the number across, it changes what the face is doing, and there's one for the hair as well. So I'm just literally keying numbers to make the hair and the face change shape. And this like shape is just like I think it's like a polygon sphere or something. I just extruded all of the verts, or just grabbed all the verts and moved them up. And like this is like a bit of a, depending on how far you want to take things with your personal shot. Like for me, this was just to promote the rig. So I spent like 3 hours on this. So like just, you could have done some really cool stuff with like painting in this stuff around the outside, you know, going hog wild with like making it look like a crayon in Photoshop or After Effects or whatever it is. And, you know, really pushing it up to a level that maybe it's something that you could include in a demo reel. But for me, the purpose of this was just like, all right, we're going to make this Goku rig. Let's put something on Twitter so that people know that it actually works. Yeah.
Keiko asks if you have a favorite Japanese anime ideas for your action shot.
I don't know about favorite, but there's anything by Studio Trigger is really cool. So like Little Witch Academia and Kill la Kill. There's Furikuri as well, which is like pretty old now, but it's amazing. My Hero Academia I've started watching, and that's got some really cool stuff in it. It's just like whatever's happening, man. Dude, anime, there's so much cool stuff. You don't have to look far. I don't think I have a favorite though. Yeah, I don't watch enough of it to like have a favorite or a least favorite or anything. What else have we got here?
Hey mate, how long did this shot take you? Just from idea to saying, yeah, it's done, I'll move on to the next. And your
Dragon Ball one?
Both. So your dragon shot.
Oh, so the
and your Dragon Ball
cool. So the Dragon Ball one was like 3 hours. Like it was really quick. It was just like an after work thing.
3 hours.
Yeah, this was a quick one. It's pretty nasty though. Like it's not, there's parts of it that I don't really like. And it's like based on a Dragon Ball Fighter Z thing, the game Dragon Ball Fighter Z. So I had like a reference point for this. This didn't just come to me. The dragon shot though, man, I'd have to go back and look at the scene files, but I think it was like a week.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite a bit longer. And this was just like on and off throughout the week. Hours here, a couple of hours there. Like, yeah, it's kind of just whatever I was doing, but I think it took about a week, maybe a bit longer. Thanks.
Francisco asks, do you use blend shapes when animating?
Only in the rigs that have them. I've been thinking about getting better at like doing some smears and stuff like that with blend shapes. There's the example of that is this shot. Oh no, where is it? Yeah. Oh, it's just my reel. Okay. Yeah, this shot in my reel. So there's like a couple of shapes. I think mostly with the flames. I think originally I had shape like a mesh duplication thing going on in like a previous iteration of it when he does this roll, but I must have gotten rid of it. Yeah, I've gotten rid of it. But yeah, I don't use it too often. I would like to get more into it because I feel like it's something fun to play with. Oh yeah, I was going to show some process for that bounty hunter shot, I think, if I've got it.
Francisco asks, what about when he pops up those guns from his arms?
Oh, that's just everything with me is really lo-fi. You'll learn that I don't do anything really advanced with my animation. this is just a piece of mesh that I duplicated from the rig. So there was like an arm piece that I liked the shape of. I just duplicated it and parented it to the hand control, and then I just rotated it up.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that's what I tell
Yeah.
the other guys to do. Just, make something that works and functions and moves correctly, and just, it's gonna just make it move cool. That's what we do.
Yeah. As long as it doesn't stand out, like it has to kind of like feel right. And that's the thing as well, is it's like these things are on screen for like 10 frames or 12 frames or something. You barely see them, so you don't get enough time to like process that this is just like empty blackness in here. Or that you see it like disappear. It doesn't actually like, there's no hole in the arm when the thing lifts up, like all that sort of stuff.
Actually, if you watch Transformers, they do the same thing.
Do they?
Yeah. I spoke to
cool.
animators on the show as well, and they all just scale, transform, rotate, whatever works. There's no one way of transforming. They just move pieces.
Yeah. Just make it look good, man.
Exactly.
Fiddle with it until it looks good. It's the same thing with these guns. Like there's nothing special. There's no like, this is a separate rig, this gun rig that I made. It's just a free gun model from the internet, like a Turbo Squid, whatever. And I just like rigged this, like whatever it's called, the back part of the gun to be able to move so that it hits these kind of like sci-fi shapes. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Like I thought it was cool when it was happening, and then like when it comes forward, that sort of slides down. Same thing when it fires. Like the top part of the gun flies way too far back. But you get these shapes, right? Same thing with the muzzle flashes. Like I just took like a poly primitive, like a cube or a triangle or something, and then just like made this shape, and then put a ramp shader on it and put like 4 bones in through the middle of it, so that I could, twist it and move it and shape it. So this muzzle flash rig is the exact same rig as the foot one. I think it's a different mesh, but it's like the same bones or whatever in the middle of it. So these flames can like twist and move around and do whatever. There's probably a better, like if I had to use blend shapes or something, I could have had some more control over exactly like what shape that it hit, and making it look a bit nicer, but it just did the job at the time. Same thing with his back. Like it would have been really cool to have like a vent or something open on his back, but you kind of just don't see it. There's not enough time. So it just works. This one shot took ages as well, by the way. This one was like months. And this was with like a mentor and everything. So there's a reason it's the first shot in my reel. It's because I worked the hardest on it. There was originally a bunch of other stuff in the shot as well. Like I had a cube and some wires and stuff. Yeah, there you go. So I used to have this in the roll. It's green because like when I play blasted it wasn't finished. And the roll looks wrong. Like this is like the shot in a way earlier part in production or part in my process. He even did like a flip. He did all this crazy stuff. Throws a grenade. And then like zip lines out of there. Like this shot was so long. The shot was 436 frames long. But
you're having fun with it. You can tell.
Yeah. Originally, this is how it looked. And then I took it to a mentor or to like a teacher, and he was like, it's good, but let's just cut like the last half of it because it's going to take way too long to make all of that work. I reckon we can get half of it working correctly, and then from there, just save it for a rainy day or just leave it. Mark's here. Oh my God. Mark's one of my internet friends.
Oh yeah.
Internet animation friends. Yeah. It's kind of cringy to look at this for me because there's so many parts in this that I thought were awesome. Like that roll, I remember thinking, wow, that's really cool. The way that he rolls so fast, but he rolls so fast. Rolls way too fast. and this part as well. I was like, this is a cool little twist that I solved. But really, like, I don't think anyone can make these shapes with their body. He goes off balance, and a lot of like this pose is really boring, and it's not based on reference. So when I did the actual this, my mentor was like, so get into this pose and then try and spin around and then get into this pose and just see how it feels. And can you do it in the way that you did it in your shot? Like, can you stand up and spin around? Or is it easier to do it another way? And I was like, all right, I'll try. So I like got a foam roller and pretended it was a gun and like got on my hands and knees and like did this action. And I was like, oh my God, I like fell over. There's no way to do it. Didn't feel right. I kept trying a few different ways. Ended up filming a bunch of reference, plonking it in the scene, and then using that as like a solve to fix that section of the animation. So I feel like that this is way more like tactical feeling than the original. There's some cool ideas in here though, like the little rocks coming up when he lands. It's pretty anime-ish.
Seema
asked,
like sorry. Seema asked if you ever come up with idea A, but while working on your idea becomes B and the final result turns out to be C. So I'm guessing the original idea and then just morphs into something entirely different.
Yeah, very rarely does it like completely 180. Like if I have the initial, idea that's cool, then I'll try and like stick to that. But this is like maybe an example of that kind of changing. So like there's a lot of stuff in here that is quite different, like how stretched he gets through here, for instance, or like this limb break right here. It just isn't present in the final version, but he still kind of does the same actions. Trying to think of anything else that just totally morphed. I don't think there is that I've worked on at least that does that full 180. Got a couple of other ones to look at here. I'll just keep going through shots and we can keep talking about them if you want, or we can jump and talk about freelance.
Nah, keep going.
Keep going?
Yeah.
All right.
So your stuff and your ideas as well.
Yeah, it's cool to like go back and look at this stuff as well. So here's like a really early version of it. And then he flies off at the end, which is different. But yeah, this is all in stepped and just, blocked out. But, you get the idea, right? Like the poses are all there. You can kind of get a feel for what he's doing a little bit. Let's look at something else. Oh yeah, so when I was at Method, I did a bunch of tests. So when they start, you want to show or a movie, they'll be like, all right, so in this movie, we've got chicken. So we want you to get used to animating chickens and get a sense of how they work. I don't have any chicken tests to show, unfortunately, but this was one that I did at the very beginning just to get used to their biped rig. And at this particular studio, they were really focused on reference and being really sticking really close to the reference. So in this version, the reference is kind of off to the side, and this is how I animated it. But there's been other shots that I did at the studio where the reference was like literally on top of the mesh, on top of the rig. So you'd like X-ray the rig and then have the reference underneath and almost match move. And then at a certain point, you pull the reference away and make all the adjustments and fixes. I don't really find that as an especially pleasing way to work. Like I think it can be a bit soulless because the motion's already there, right? Like there's no creativity in like coming up with the motion. You're not really solving many problems. You're just kind of like looking really hard at something. And there's something to be like learned from that, right? Like with this shot, it's like how does his hips move as he goes through the air? Like a lot of people do jump animations and the hips just stay totally locked as they go up and down, or maybe the whole body just rotates. But like when you're jumping through the air, there's like, if you look really close at the reference, he does like this little twist thing, and then it rotates around to talk for his body and the action of the hand coming down. So there's like stuff to learn in there, but it's not like you're, there's not like a creativity to it. You're not like just discovering something and then twisting it. You're just discovering something and then making it look exactly as the way that you saw it. And that's not to say that that is like the way that it always works, but for the most part, I found that it was like, find the reference for the thing that we have in this shot and then rotomate it as best you can, and then we're going to use that. But I learned a lot in animating this way. It's definitely something I recommend people try to do, especially if you're like getting used to animation. If you're a junior, it can be a way to get a really clean looking thing and get used to like how much work it takes to get something looking natural. I think a lot of times junior or newer animators will call an action done, like I saw before, like with my bounty hunter shot. I was like, it's done, you know, but really there was all this extra stuff that needed to come on top of it to like push it to that next level to make it look like it was actually a real body mechanic shot. And so you learn a lot when you do this sort of thing, right? Like you learn that the spine is made up of all these different pieces and they need to like overlap in a certain way, and you can't just break laws willy-nilly in order to like get it looking realistic. So yeah, it's useful. Plus it's kind of fun and mindless. Like it's like painting weights or doing UVs or whatever it is that you do in 3D that like you get to switch your brain off a little bit for. You just kind of like put the reference in and just frame by frame or every 4 frames. Anybody else have anything? Oh yeah, sorry, I'm just reading the chat. When do you call a shot finished? I don't think I've ever fully finished a shot. Yeah, man, it's like, it's finished when the deadline is, right? Or it's finished when you're really, really sick of it if it's a personal shot. If you've just seen it too many times and you're like, I'm done. Can be nice to get like fresh eyes on a shot like that to see like, because oftentimes there's stuff that other people see that you don't see. So it's really useful to show other people. But sometimes you just want to be done with it, right? What else have I got in here? So this shot also has like a no reference version, which is just the same thing, right? But it's useful to have both so you can see like, there's something weird that happens. Even though there's reference in the scene and you're looking at your animation, you still kind of, you're still affected by the reference, even if you're not looking at it directly. So playing your animation back without any reference will show you things that you might not have seen before. How does everyone else feel about when you call a shot finished? Do you have like a point in time? Are you like, I'm going to work on this for X amount of hours, or do you wait until it's approved by someone, or like, how do you know when you're done?
Yeah, it depends on deadlines or if it's personal shot. Yeah, it depends on if you're sick of it. And also, you know, sometimes I might do like, you know, say 3 revisions with feedback from people, or even, yeah, just like, I'll look at it, I'll say a personal shot, I'll put into Sing Sketch myself and actually just objectively just go through frame by frame, you know, check the arcs and everything. So don't even think it's my shot and just see if they're all correct. You know, the checklist. Once that's done, then I'll just get rid of it.
Yep. Do you use someone's checklist in particular, or do you have your own checklist?
It's just my own now. It's pretty much like, you know, make sure the fundamentals are in there, like the polish to clean up the arcs, spacing feels good, you know, timing, rhythm, motion, all that stuff. Feels real and believable, feels heavy, overlaps, you know, all the juicy stuff. So
that good juice. There's something that I try to do is flip the canvas. So like you play your animation back. And this is another test that I did while I was at Method. This was for Jumanji, because I have a horse in that movie. So it's
Awesome.
just like, yeah. But if you flip it, suddenly like everything changes. Everything changes, and like it's sort of like flipping the canvas when you're drawing. If anyone's ever used Photoshop to paint and stuff like that, you see a lot of different things. Because it's like your mind's not used to it or something. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but you do see things fresh. It's also good to take a break, right? Like after you play blast something, go get a coffee, come back, try and have fresh eyes. The best way to do it, obviously, is to like go to sleep. Like if you play blast something at the end of the day, have a sleep, come back, look at it fresh in the morning, then you'll see things, or hopefully you see things. But yeah.
Yeah, I find that's the best. Checking it out the next day in the morning.
Yeah.
It just looks like a different shot. So
yeah, it always does, and it always is awful.
Yeah.
It's always like, oh no, did I put this up for dailies? Oh god, I put this up for dailies.
You open up on my series.
Yeah, someone else did this. Yeah, that's kind of all I got to show in terms of my work and talking about personal work. If you've got any questions, then we can talk about stuff. Oh, I saw someone asking about games versus film. What was that one?
That was probably a question, actually.
That's all right.
What are the main differences between working for gaming industry to VFX industry? That's by Andre.
Okay. Andre, yeah, the main thing that I noticed when I started working in film was that there was a much higher attention to detail. So with games, especially if you're working at a smaller studio and there's no like animation dailies or review, you kind of just animate and stuff ends up in the game. People don't necessarily give you notes until they see it working, and then you might get like, hey, this feels weird, but it's often by like someone else on the team, not necessarily even an animator. Whereas in film, it's like you show your lead and you show the supervisor, and it ends up going to see like, you know, the higher ups, visual effects supervisor and director and all that. And everyone has their own take on the notes. So you end up with this like hyper adjusted sense of what everyone in the team really wants to see and how they react to things. And as a result, you get like hyper focused on detail. So you know that like your animation soup, for instance, really likes the sort of raw muscle firing feeling in creatures. They don't want to have a sense that they're really thinking about their motions. So you try and build that in. You know that the lead really wants to see like solid mechanics and no weird off balance stuff. So you try and make sure you get that in there. And then, you know, the director has always given like weird notes about whatever. I don't know, the directors give weird notes. So, but you try and like put all of that stuff in before you even put it up for me anyway, before I even put it up for blocking. So that by the time they see it, it's like the best it can be. And then you get notes. There's a bit of like a, you know, I don't know how you feel about this, Eddie, but sometimes people put up like stepped animation, or they put up just first pass spline for dailies. Do you have like a way that you prefer to do it, or that you found that it works where you are now?
When it comes to biped stuff, I'd go with step keys, and go with step keys, even detailed blocking in stepped for a few rounds. When it's more creature stuff and stuff with plates, I'll just go linear. I'll just go straight ahead a bit and go straight into splining. I don't know why. I guess because there's a plate and there's a camera, which is already smooth. And I guess for some reason, maybe with quads, I just find, just splining is a lot easier for my brain anyway to kind of link it all together.
Yeah. Do you do like a layered thing where you like move the torso through space and then like layer in the legs, or do you like build the poses as you go through straight ahead?
I go straight ahead. So every pose I'll pose out and make it clean as much as I can, including fingers, but no fingers. So even maybe like hard to tell or anything like that. But I'll try to make each pose clean and clear.
Yeah. And I that's back to the games versus movies thing. Sometimes games is a bit more like varied in terms of what you are aiming to get. So like, depending on the project, it's going to be like a third-person action game or a first-person shooter or like a top-down twin-stick shooter. Like there's all sorts of different things that it could be, and all of those require like a different way of looking at animation and how you treat it. Whereas movies is like, you've got the plate and that's kind of it, right? Like, or you've got the shot, the layout, and that's kind of what you're stuck with. So you're like, it's good and bad in both ways, right? Like if you're doing game, you kind of got to think that it's going to look good from multiple angles. So that's like a challenge. But if you're doing film, then you're locked on the angle. So you have to make it look good from that angle, but you can cheat a little bit sometimes, or you can hide things and force perspective and stuff like that, as long as the audience, or it's not apparent to everyone. So yeah, there is differences, and there's also differences in like, at least I found in terms of like the hierarchy of the studio. Like when I worked at Method, it was quite a big place, like a large company owned by a, it had like it used to be Allura, and it was bought by Method. So there's like a bit more of a corporate structure. There's a lot more sort of admin and middle management and stuff like that, which is good and bad. But whereas in games, especially in Melbourne, I find most of the studios are small, indie or medium, and they don't necessarily have all of the layers of staff, the same level of staff and the same hierarchies as well. So at most I've had like 3 or 2 other animators on a games project. Whereas in film, there was like, I think there was like 12 of us or something like that working at Method. And they were all sort of varying levels of awesome, like there was like people who were really, really great at specific things and other people who were really great at specific things. And everyone kind of had their like niche in film. Whereas in games, I found it's just like everyone's just doing the animation. Maybe it's just like, it's because Melbourne's games industry is a little bit younger, and it's sort of, well, it's not younger, but it's been torn down and it's trying to build itself back up again over time. So it feels a bit like a bit more immature in certain ways, not in a bad way. I'm not trying to like be mad at the games industry, but it does feel a little bit less sort of, it's like it's had less time to cook. So there's still like, people are still trying to work things out. I'm just going to close the laundry door. I don't know if you can hear the